Dr. Margaret Diddams, and she is a professor of industrial and organizational psychology, here at Salem Pacific University. She's also director of the Center for Scholarship and Faculty Development. She has a bachelor's degree in psychology from Wheaton College, an MA and PhD in industrial and organizational psychology from New York University. She's a dynamic speaker and has taught at Columbia University and SPU for over 25 years. So let's give her a warm welcome.
Thank you all for coming out. It's a gorgeous afternoon. We finally have sun. And by the way, I did not write the bio because I don't think I would describe myself as a dynamic speaker. But you can decide. I'm grateful for the appellation there. So thank you very much for coming out. Let's see how we're doing on our thing here. Here's what I want to cover in our hour today. Just really quick, kind of not the who, you're the who, but the what, where, why, and the mechanics of graduate school. And I'm going to do some, run through an example of how you might think about financing grad school. All right, you are here for a reason, and that reason is you are thinking about going to grad school. So, deep breath. How many of you are interested in a very particular field and you know what you want to do? Perfect. How many of you who just raised your hand, how many of you are interested in pursuing a PhD? Okay. How many of you, yeah, that's fair. How many of you are interested in pursuing a master's degree and you know what that master's degree is? All right. How many of you are here because you think you might like to go to grad school and you don't know? Yeah, raise them high. That is great. We are going to address all three of your desires here. Let me tell you how I decided to go to grad school. I was a sophomore at Wheaton College. I had turned in an incredibly awful paper because as a product of the Chicago public school system, I did not know how to write. And my dear professor wrote in the margins, don't write like this when you go to grad school. And I am a bit of a Pollyanna, and I thought to myself, goodness gracious, he thinks I can go to grad school. So, apart from the D I probably got on the paper, but I never even really thought about grad school. I'm a first generation college student, and frankly, when I went to college, it's as if I had shot a rocket and gone to the moon. I just did not understand what it meant even to be in college. So I decided to be a psychologist because I figured you went to college to be an ist, right? You went to be a psychologist or a biologist or a physicist, and the idea that you could do anything with any major, I just didn't understand. So I love psychology, but frankly I came to it through the back door as an ist around that. So I'm really comfortable with you all here saying, I think I might want to go to grad school. I really don't know what this is about. Let's use this hour to talk about it. Those of you who know what you want to do, that is great, and I have some information for you too to focus on here. First of all, there's two types of grad school, and whether or not you choose to go to one or the other is really dependent on your career goals. So let's talk about them for a second. The first one is professional or practitioner training, and this is the #1 type of graduate school that students tend to go to. These are what we tend to think of as master's programs. So you're going to get very specific skills and pretty much job-related skills with that. So you gotta go like this. So if you're interested in fields around healthcare, engineering, management, education, and the arts, there are specific master's degrees that you're probably going to pursue, and there are some doctorate degrees also. So these might look familiar to you. It's the M's. So if you're interested in an MFA, an MBA, Master's in Management, Master's in Engineering, Master's in Industrial Organizational Psychology, MS, MSN, you get it. These are the types of degrees that have very much of a vocational interest to them in the fact that you need these degrees usually to get some sort of licensure or certification to work in the field. And how many of you are interested in that type of degree to to get on professional work. This is really what people tend to focus on when they go to grad school. It's some type of certification, licensure, or the next hurdle you need to get a job in the field of interest. And what I've told my own children, who are now all adults, is go ahead, major in whatever you want, and plan on doing another 1 to 2 years of professional training in the job that you are thinking of. And that's not a bad thing to think about. And I also talk about 1-year programs to get you to that next level around a job. This type of master's degree is known as a terminal master's. And that's really important for you to know because it is the end, the terminal. And what's important for you to know about this type of degree is you usually don't go and then, oh, I have my master's, now I'll just do 2 more years for a PhD. These master's degrees are very career-oriented and practical-oriented, whereas the PhD tends to be research-oriented. So if you think to yourself, I don't really know if I want to do a PhD, I'll do a master's first and then I'll go and get a PhD, you're going to wind up doing the PhD from beginning to end. So you really want to decide up front what type of master's or doctoral program you're interested in, because the research-oriented PhD will take very few, if any, of these kind of terminal master's credits. So you just need to be very, very aware of that and in the field. Does that make sense? The master programs are different. So MFA, PhD, these are research-oriented degrees. When I went to NYU, I sat in front of a computer for 5.5 days a week. So I analyzed data, not people. But it was not a degree where I was expected to work in the field. It was really training me to be a professor and a researcher. So one of the things I want to say, I'm going to go off script a little bit. I have talked to students in the past who have wanted a PhD because that was the big degree, right? The big show, and they wanted to get the big degree, but they had no really interest in spending the rest of their lives doing research. Get the degree that makes sense for your career goals, and not just because you think that that's the cat's meow to get that doctoral degree. And I'm not sure why I said cat's meow. It just popped into my head. All right. So, oftentimes in a PhD, there will be a master's degree. It's just part of the program. So when I got my master's degree at NYU, that night that I was quote-unquote awarded the degree, my husband and I went out for a strawberry shortcake. It wasn't a big deal. It wasn't like when he got his MBA from Northwestern and we were whooping it up. So whatever. Yeah, I got to throw the guy a bone, right? So, I did get the PhD. Yeah, this is how we do it in my family. I got the PhD, he makes more money. But I do what I love. You get the idea. All right, so these professional degrees, they're often 1 to 2 year programs, and they're often geared toward working adults. So they'll be, you work during the day, you wear yourself out, you go to school for another 3 to 4 or 5 hours. Sounds lovely, right? But people do it. People do it all the time. You're usually with a small number of people, depending on the program, might be anywhere 15, 30. The big MBA schools might be 100, but it's not like 1,000 people that are going through your program. You might also do professional training where it's a certificate program, where you're getting 3, 4, 5 classes, and then you get a certificate, okay? They can often be cohort programs. And the idea is that you get accepted with a group of students and you go with those students and you take all the same classes. And this happens often with small programs. They're not going to offer multiple sections of a type of course, so they offer the course at a specific quarter or a specific semester in the sequence. which means whomever you go to school with are now your family and your best friends. I went, again, at NYU, there were 6 of us in that year, and these are people that I am still dear friends with many years later, and there were times when I wanted to kill every one of them. But it is really like your family when you're going through graduate school together. All right, so usually with these professional degrees, there's not a lot of financial aid, scholarship available. There are, however, Stafford loans, and let's see if this is going to work. I have my back to the camera. Stafford loans right now are up to $20,000 per year. So here's the website for that, Stafford loan.com. It's a federal loan, and again, it's up to $25,000 now per year. What's important here is no payments while enrolled in school. So if you want to take a semester off or a quarter off, the clock starts ticking on your Stafford loan. So you really, if you commit to grad school and you're going to take out loans, you really want to finish it, because there's really nothing worse, and here's a caveat for you, than to start grad school, take out loans, $20,000 to $40,000, and then you don't finish, and you're on the hook for that $40,000, $20,000, and yet you haven't gotten to the point where you've earned the degree and you can enter into the field. So you really, that's not yay, rah, rah cheerleading. You want to make sure that you're ready and committed, and your family is ready and committed for you to make that deep dive, because you don't want to stick your toe in the water if you're taking out this kind of financial aid. You really want to be prepared. And does that make sense? So I want to cheerlead, go to grad school, but you really have to do it wholeheartedly if you start to take out loans to make that happen. I'm going to show you some other websites too. All right, so talking about the doctorate training. Doctorate training, you'll work, but you're also going to be working in someone's lab, and you'll also be doing a teaching assistantship. So if you do that research-oriented PhD, you usually have your way paid, and you get some kind of living stipend. Now, doesn't that sound great? Opposed to $20,000 a year, student loan, free education, and you get a stipend. Well, guess what? These are very highly, highly competitive. NYU takes 10% of their applicants. So if you're going to do a PhD, you have to make sure that you are well prepared to be a strong candidate. Those of you who raised your hand that way, because it is highly, highly competitive, again, around that. The master's programs are pretty much coursework and maybe teamwork outside. When you do a PhD, very little of your time is spent in the classroom. Much more of it is doing research. And like, oh my goodness, I have to go to class. Probably 1/3 of the time is classroom time, and then 2/3 you're doing research with this kind of degree. So again, very different experiences of the type of different graduate around that. Much more like a British tutorial system. So where in the world should you go? My favorite website is just petersons.com. And I'm going to work through an example for the next couple slides of occupational therapists. Anyone interested in occupational therapy here? All right. Well, my daughter-in-law is, so I thought I'd work through the example for you. So let's go to petersons.com. And you'll see it says college bound and grad school bound. And I'm just going to work through an example here. Put my glasses off because I can't see the screen. And see, it says what level degree, and I'm going to check master's. And I'm going to go to the next step. And it says what do you want to study. Let's see how our internet connection here is. And I'm going to go occupational. And here's we have occupational therapy. I'm going to go to the next step. And I'm going to say, it's going to say select miles within. And I want my daughter-in-law to stay around here because I like her a lot. Okay, so I'm going to type in 98119. And let's see what schools there are. Oh, looky here, school I had never heard of. Pacific University School of Occupational Therapy in Forest Grove, Oregon. Good to know. Or I could go to the highly competitive UW school. And that's something else. If you're interested in UW, by all means go, but it is going to be highly competitive in any of their programs because of the low cost. So keep this in mind. We're going to come back to Pacific. Well, I'll actually show you right now. So this is going to take me over to the School of Occupational Therapy at Pacific University. It's going to give me some information here, and I'm going to go to their website. Yes, I am. Oh, and here's some more information on it. So anyways, Peterson gives you this information here. Here's the Masters of Occupational Therapy. And sorry, folks, I will work this all off in my office. And I wanted to link to the school, but that's okay. This is for our purposes here. But you can get to the school from this website. All right, so petersons.com, great example. You can also look at the professional organization in the industry that you're interested in. So for example, here's a link to the American Association for Occupational Therapy. And here they have careers in education, and here's all of the schools that have secondary accreditation. Here's something important for you. If you are getting one of these professional degrees and there is a professional organization associated with it. So for example, if you're interested in marriage and family therapy, anyone interested in going into counseling? That's okay. It's good. A lot of these organizations have a professional guild and professional standards, and because they have professional standards, they accredit the programs. I'm going to talk a little bit, I'm going to jump ahead on this. So you'll notice here it says occupational therapy master's level programs accredited. You need to know if the program you are going to has a professional guild and if the school that you're interested in is indeed accredited. Because a lot of places will not hire you if you don't go to a school that has a secondary accreditation. When you hear the phrase secondary accreditation, that means that it is accredited by the guild of the field. You don't want to go to a school that's, if there is secondary accreditation, you want to make sure you go to a school that is accredited. Primary accreditation is the university's accreditation. So SPU is accredited by the Northwest Commission on Colleges and Universities, affectionately known as NUWUCU. I know. But we have secondary accreditation in our School of Education, in our School of Counseling. We're working on engineering right now. We have it in engineering. Marriage and family therapy, clinical psychology, our MBA, those all have secondary accreditations. So if a school tells you we're accredited, you want to make sure that the program itself is accredited. Okay, just keep that in mind when you see accredited like that. All right, let's go back to our presentation. One thing I want to tell you, I love our management in social and sustainable, our master's in social and sustainable management, and I'm going to show you something here. Their website, if you scroll down, the reason I love this program, and I don't teach in it, scroll down in any program, and I want you to see something here. Professional development and placement. If you are thinking about graduate school, you want to make sure, or investigate, where do they place graduates? And how do they help you get a job? Our Masters in Management, one of the key aspects of development in that program is to help our students get jobs, not go. So it's not enough for you just to go to get a master's. You need to make sure that it has secondary accreditation, and you want to know how it helps you to get a job. What are the connections with that? What is their placement office? Good grad schools will have a placement office. At least someone who can talk with you about that. So if you're going to make this kind of investment, again, make sure accreditation and placement. And our MASM program is great with that. All right. You may or may not be invited to interview. It doesn't say anything about the school if you are or are not invited for the interview day. Some schools choose to do that, some don't. It's totally up to you. Around that, just to give you a heads up on that. Okay, online programs. I'm asked about this sometimes. Same thing. Is it accredited? Does it have secondary accreditation? And what's the placement rate with it? So I don't want to say one thing or another about an online program. Those are two things you need to consider around it. The other aspect I want to suggest to you that's important is there social interaction on the web. I've come across online programs where it's something that we call turnkey, and all you do is work through stuff on the web, and there's no interaction with a live person, even if it's asynchronous. The research is really suggesting that you want to make sure in an online program that there's some sort of social presence with both other students and with a professor. Otherwise, all you're doing is reading books online, basically. But I really want to encourage you, online programs are fine, make sure it has that social presence aspect to it. Now, some programs will do a hybrid, well, you'll come on campus for intensives for a week or two, maybe in the summer, and then everything else is online. Those are viable models with it. But find out placement and salary. All right, we also have 30 programs. Other programs besides MASM here. I taught in our industrial organizational psychology program for years. I taught in our clinical psychology, and I taught in our MBA. They're robust programs. And if you think to yourself, goodness gracious, I've had enough of SPU. I don't want to go there anymore. Our graduate programs are so different from the undergraduate programs. It won't be like, oh, I'm just doing a 5th or 6th year here. So please do consider SPU. Okay, who to talk to find out more about programs? Professional programs will usually have someone that you can contact. So we have the graduate school office here to look at that. Do me a favor and never call a professor to ask them about their program. And the reason you don't want to do this because you'll be the 25th person that year to contact them, and they don't have the time. So please do not contact individual professors. Contact the office that's associated with that. And your advisor may know someone at the school. In that case, they can do the introduction for you, but you really don't want to cold call a professor. Contact the office there. So, how to prepare? There's a bit of a catch-22, and everyone faces this. So in a professional program, they often want to see if you have work experience, but in order to get work experience, you have to have the master's. Go figure on that. So you do want to look into work-related internships, and it's not too early for that here. If you think you want to go to grad school, think about doing an internship in the field. Internships are not just for getting a job. Internships can help you into grad school. And I want you to think about it that way. I did an internship at the University of Minnesota. You see that little Minnesota, that's how I talk. So that internship at the University of Minnesota got me into grad school. No doubt about it. So, because of this catch-22, please seriously think about doing internships as a way to get to grad school. On the academic side, many of you are doing research as undergraduates. That is great. Keep doing that. Work with multiple professors. in doing research, and that will help a whole lot in getting into that doctoral type grad school. By the way, the Center for Scholarship and Faculty Development, we offer $500 scholarships if you are doing research and you are going to present that research at a professional conference. We will help pay for you to go because we view that as vocational exploration. So you can talk to me more about that. Also, my email is mdiddams@spu.edu, or you can email CSFD, Center for Scholarship Faculty Development, @spu.edu, and I can give you pointers around that. Okay, when to apply? Check with the programs. Master's programs often have rolling due dates, so you can decide anytime, and you might apply for the next quarter or semester. PhDs are usually January or February, so it takes a little more planfulness around that. So, given that, when to take the GREs, I want to encourage you to take the GREs or GMAT or whatever, MCAT or whatever it is that you're going to take as soon as possible, because right now you're in study mode. You're in study pain mode now. And the scores are good for 5 years. So consider taking it now, and at least you have that in your back pocket around that. So take it in the next year or two around that. I want to talk to you a little bit about this financial considerations again. Graduate programs, again, are less likely to offer financial aid. So most of them are designed so that you can work and then go to school, so you don't have to take out those huge loans. But you want to know the starting salaries so that you can gauge how much debt you can take on. Okay? So I want to walk you through an example of how you can find out starting salaries. Okay? So again, I'm going to use this example of occupational therapists in the Seattle area. The first website I'm going to go to is something called ONET. And if you take nothing else out of here, but you guys are taking notes, you're making me feel really good. You want to go to the ONET website. It's called ONET Online. This is your federal tax dollars at work. Between this and Yosemite Park, this is worth your tax dollars. ONET Online. This will tell you everything about any job you're interested in. So I'm going to type in occupational therapist here. And here it gives me all titles of jobs that look like it's related to occupational therapists. And here's what I love. Look at this. It's a bright outlook. There's jobs. There's jobs out there. Okay, thank you, federal government. That makes me feel so happy. So I'm going to click on occupational therapist, and everything you could possibly want to know about occupational therapist is here. So first of all, it tells me what an occupational therapist does. And that's important. So you might be interested in a career and you're not quite sure what they do. Go to ONET. ONET will tell you what they do. ONET, by the way, hires tons and tons of industrial organizational psychologists who do these sorts of job analysis and then put it online. And then it tells you what types of tools and technology are used. So here you need to run video magnifiers. That makes sense for occupational therapists. Then, what kind of knowledge are you going to need to complete that degree? And what kind of skills? And I love this, active listening. The rest of you don't need to do active listening. But if you're going to occupational therapy, you're going to need that. Then it also talks about abilities and work activities, work context. Then, this is good, it tells you what type of training you might need or related experience. Okay? Then it tells you what kind of degree. Mostly you can do occupational therapy with a master's degree. So, here's fine training, again, like that petersons.com, you can do it through ONET. Here's what I really, keep going. Here's related occupations, like, well, I think I like occupational therapy, but what else is related to it? Then all the way down, local salary info. How much money could I expect to make if I graduate with this degree? So select a state. I'm going to go to, guess what? Washington. I'm going to hit go. It's going to take me to another website. And looky here. This is that the 90th percentile, what you might expect a new graduate to make. But we live in Seattle and not Ephrata. So let's think about what might be the starting salary in this area. And it's 61. So you can see that's quite a leap. So make sure you're looking at the right place of where you plan to live. So pretty much you can expect to be in the low 60s if you get a master's and are just getting hired in occupational therapy there. So did you kind of see where I went? Started ONET, scroll all the way down to the bottom, and you can find out the wage information in any major metropolitan area in the country. All right. Also, you can go to a website called careeronestop.org. Right? careeronestop.org. And I can say, well, where are the jobs for occupational therapy? So I'm going to, guess what, type in here. And I'm going to look at state job banks in the great state of Washington. And I'm going to hit go. Excuse me, guys. Okay. So, I did this. You can play with this. Whenever I do a presentation, I learn to do, so I don't do this, so I bury myself on this. But anyways, you can use Career One Stop to look for salaries and jobs in the area. Let me try job search. Here we go. Yes, I know what I'm doing. Let's go back. Go to job search. Again, let me type that in. And it was 65 jobs in the area. Great way to look for a job in a specific area. And even if you don't go to grad school, use ONET, use Career One Stop to look for jobs in the area. All right, I saved myself on that one. So, next, good rule of thumb, if you're thinking about taking out financial aid, is in those Stafford loans, is your Stafford loans should not, your debt load should be about the same as your starting salary. So if you are looking at occupational therapist and starting pay at about $60,000, you should not take out more than $60,000 in debt. That is total with whatever you're paying undergrad. So that's about the debt load that you manage. There's also another, that's just rule of thumb, that's a decent rule of thumb. There's another website here, guess what, called finaid.org. All right, and you can look at here, a student loan advisor for undergraduate students. You can also look at it for graduate students. So I can click here at Masters, and you existed an hour ago in my office. So I don't know why it's doing that. But basically, you can do this here. I can put in 61,000, expected year of graduation, and I can put in 2017. Your debt ratio is 10 to 15% of your pay. So I'm going to give debt to income ratio here's 15%. Stafford loans are at 8.25 and 10 years. So this basically tells me that I can take on about $64,000 of debt. Make sure you do this sort of calculations as you're thinking about, am I ready to go to grad school? Can I pay for the debt load given the job prospects out there? All right. So that's basically setting up and doing the kind of the discovery. Am I ready for grad school? Am I ready to jump in? Do I know what the starting salaries are going to be and how much debt I can take on? One other thing, and I think it might be in my later slides, looking at, for example, occupational therapists, tuition is about 2/3 of the cost. So you need to take into consideration fees, books. You know how outrageous your books are right now? Guess what? Graduate school books are equally outrageous in their cost. There might be fees, there might be clinical fees, transportation. It can add up easily to another third. So make sure you know the total cost of a program and not just its tuition around that. Okay. So you're going to need recommendations when you apply to grad school. I have read a lot of letters of recommendations in my time here at SPU, and there's a couple of things I want you to take away from that. Do not ask a professor to write you a letter. The only relationship you have with that professor is that you were a student in his or her class. Those letters go nowhere. I actually read a letter once where a professor wrote, she listened attentively in my class. First of all, he should have never, and it was a he should have never agreed to have written that letter for a student. You want to make sure that these letters are going to stand out, so you want to make sure that you have some sort of relationship with that faculty member, preferably outside of class, preferably you're doing some sort of work with that professor, either research or as a TA or something, where they can actually write about your skills outside of the classroom. Associate and full professor letters way more than assistant professors. So also know who you're asking letters for. But if you had a choice between a full professor that you only know in class or an assistant professor that you're doing research with, go with the professor that you're doing research with. You also, in a sense, you kind of want to write the letter for them. So you're going to want to give them, not only ask them for the letter, but you want to give them your vita, your transcript, your career goals. You want to remind them of the work that you have been doing with them or with other faculty members. Basically, you want to make it as easy as possible for them to write that letter for you. Okay? Be a good citizen. Ask them 6 weeks out if you haven't figured it out yet. One of the things about being a human being, we think we have more time in the future than we do right now. So the more you can ask someone to do something in the future for you, the more they think they have time, but guess what? They really don't, but they don't. We don't realize that. So ask them way out, remind them 2 weeks before it's due. And it's usually when you get that reminder that they'll actually do it, but you still want to ask them way out. You're also going to have to write a personal statement. There's a couple goals for the departments that you're applying to with these personal statements. The first one is we want to see if you can write. Can you hold a narrative thread? Can you follow instructions? So you need to write to the specific prompt. Every year in IO psychology, we will get a couple students who forgot to change out the names of the schools. So, you know, there's nothing more than I want to do than to attend the University of Minnesota and study under X. It's like, well, all right, good luck with that. Hope it works out for you. You know, if I'm reading 150 applications and you haven't bothered to pre-read to make sure that you changed out the names, you're going to go in the not so sure pile. So You want to write well and answer to the prompt, the specific prompt that they're asking for. You also want to make your essay stand out. Literally, you have, at the graduate level, it's usually the professors and not the admissions office who are reading these. So this is your entree to the people that you're probably going to work with or for. And that's why it's really important that these are well done, because we sit around a table with a lot of food and we read these essays, and this is my introduction to you. And if it's not written well, and if there's grammatical errors, guess what? This is all I have to go on. Who you are as a person beyond your transcript. They have to be well written. And the more vivid you can make it, the better. You want your story to stand out. So do spend time on these essays. They matter more than they probably did when you were an undergrad and admissions had 20,000 applications that they were going through. You really want to pay attention to this. If you're applying to a PhD program, you will be assigned to a specific PhD advisor day one. So talk about who you want to work with as your advisor in these letters. Okay? Please stay away from telling a school that if they accept you, you will bring sunshine to their program and you'll be one of the best students and you will enhance the reputation once you graduate, etc. Don't do that. Because one of the things that a graduate program is looking for, in all seriousness, is the extent to which you are willing to learn and willing to change and adapt and transform. So that aspect of it becomes very important. Some final thoughts and we'll open it up for questions. Is grad school for you? Probably. It's not unusual also, looking at our alumni surveys, that those of you in this room, you might not decide to go to grad school for another 5, 10, or 15 years. And that's fine. You just have to take the GRE again. But you have a better sense of your career and where you want to go and what you need for that next step around that. You will also be going to grad school with overachievers. Now, I'm thinking that all of you are here are overachievers at SPU because you're here right now and you're thinking this much ahead. Imagine going to school where everyone that you're seated with in class is as overachieving as you. It's going to be harder than it is right now. It's going to be very, very different. So I just want you to be ready for the wave that's going to hit you when you go to grad school. The study writing habits that you have now will be put to the test. No more one-night wonder papers. It ain't going to happen. That's not going to happen. I don't care how much caffeine you ingest. It's not going to happen. So you just have to do it differently. Yeah, you know what I'm talking about. I don't care how much caffeine you have. Okay. You also have to weigh this with what other commitments you have. And we used to joke when I was at NYU that PhD stood for probably headed for divorce. No, I wish I could joke about this, but now in all seriousness, if you are in a relationship with someone and one or both of you are in graduate school, it is a joint commitment. It is an absolutely joint commitment. And not always do people understand that. So one of the saddest, besides divorces, we had a student going through our clinical psychology program here, and his wife refused to go to the graduation ceremony as her way of saying, you have negatively impacted our family for the last 5 years, and I'm not going to honor you at graduation. So there are these stories, just terrible stories. So you need to have that conversation with your beloved ones on what it means for, in a sense, this is going to be a joint degree and a joint degree, and what are the expectations for both around that. And what are you going to do about the debt? I lived in a rent-controlled apartment in the Bronx for years and years and years because we were paying off my husband's student loans. So now I have a nice house in Shoreline. I stuck it out, but the apartment we were in is not something I'd like to have my parents come and visit and say, oh, look at us. There's the couch. Okay. So what are the commitments you have and who is your support group as you go through this? And then final thoughts, and I promise you this is the last slide. Contemplate where you want to end up. So the question is not, is grad school for you? The first question is, what is it that you want to do? And then work backwards from that. And it could be that you just don't know right now, and that is fine. Because life is a wonderful educational tool in addition to your BA or BS that is preparing you for that life story. Plan ahead. If you do decide to go to grad school, you're probably looking at a 3 to 4 month process of putting together that application, writing your letters, getting your recommendations, etc. And seek help. We have the Center for Career and Calling. You have the Center for Scholarship and Faculty Development. We want you to succeed. So we will help you figure out what it is that you want to do. And taking time off to consider your options is a form of wisdom. I took a year off because I wasn't sure that I wanted to go to grad school as much as I wanted to please a beloved advisor who was so encouraging. And I needed to step away and make sure that I was doing it for me and for my husband's, for us, again, that we were doing it together, and also the fact that he was finishing his career and we didn't want to have 2 of us in grad school because then we just never would have seen each other. So there's other options you can do. I also run the Fulbright program. So maybe in addition to visiting Yosemite and using ONET on the government's dime, you might like to go study abroad for a year and have that all expense paid. Teach for America and VISTA programs. Maybe volunteer, again, with the federal government paying for it, helps to give some clarity for what you want to do. So it's very acceptable. I want it to be acceptable in your head that you're going to have some more time around discovery of figuring out what you want to do before you go to grad school. And if you don't go to grad school next year or right after you graduate, that is perfectly reasonable and normative of what people tend to do. They tend to take some time off to figure out what you want to do. I'm done talking now, and I'm happy to take some questions.
I had a question about recommendations. So
Yeah.
say that you take, a year or 2 or a couple years off, and then you go back and get like your master's, for example.
Right.
What do you do about recommendations? Because obviously it's been a couple of years since you've been in school.
Yeah, that is a perfectly good question. I don't have too many silver bullets with that. First thing you want to do is, if that's the case, schools know it. So they'll ask for a letter from the person that you are working with or whatever, that's fine. If you are even thinking about graduate school, have that conversation with your advisor now and ask, in 2 or 3 years, can I come back and ask you for a letter? But set them up now around that. But that is a tricky thing. It's a very good question to ask about that. Yeah.
Similar question, but like we need 2 to 3 references for recommendation letters, but I mean you've only done like out of class range of like 1, like you kind of just settle like doing really high in class, or like what do you?
You really do want to build relationships now with your faculty. You really do. There's no good way around it. The letters that are just professors that you were in their class with, they're just not strong letters. Imagine, because everyone has letters like that. Those are the very base rate letters. They're not bad, it's just kind of it doesn't catch my attention. It doesn't catch my attention. You want to make sure that you're doing work with professors. Now, it's not unusual for some of our students to come back after they graduate and volunteer to work with professors on research. You can also do that too. Yeah,
Do you have any information on international projects?
on international programs.
Or just like
I'm sure you can find it on the web. There's lots of, yes, there's lots of opportunities, for example, to study in China and India, etc. In fact, I met a person who, MBAs are so expensive here in the US, he went and got an MBA in India. Now, and this is a good point, is, yeah, you can get the degree, but what's the placement, and is someone going to look at your resume and say, I don't even know where this is, what kind of degree is this? So that's the balance of it, but for our time together to kind of expand on what that is. Now, there's other schools in the US that have programs, international programs. So University of Maryland, for example, has lots of international programs. The Thunderbird School, lots of international programs. NYU, lots of international programs. So you can look at American programs or American schools that have programs abroad, and that would probably be a good hybrid to look at. So you still get the University of Maryland degree, but you get the opportunity to basically earn it abroad. That's a very good question. That's a great question. Yeah.
When you were wrapping up, you said to contemplate kind of where you want to end up,
Yeah.
and then kind of reverse engineer your course.
Yeah.
What would you say to someone who maybe has a broader sense of not necessarily where you want to end up, but where you want to go through your career? Like, I am an interior design major,
Yeah.
and I have an interest in particularly Japanese culture. However, I still want to end up somewhere managing design projects between the US and Asia. But along that way, there's a lot of different positions that I find related, but seem to be, when I talk to anyone else, seem to be like, no, you can't really do that.
Okay, good question. So another thing I want to suggest to you in the year off is we have a remarkable number of students who teach English in different countries. And in fact, my daughter's best friend who graduated from here is in Japan on her second year right now teaching English. And her Japanese is now fluent, and she will be coming back and will not be teaching Japanese as part of that. But this was her cultural experience. So that could be something to think about, to have that experience now. Same with the Fulbright. And it's kind of there, but you can manage it in Japan and learning all about design as part of teaching English. That's a nice way to do that. So you can kind of do these bumps along the road. I'll take one more and then you all are fleeing. There. Hey.
I have a question about the GRE.
Yeah.
Is there like only a certain time of year that you can sign up and take it, or is there pretty like consistent testing?
Well, in fact, February 2nd or something like that is, I think, is the next time. They offer it several times through the year. And also, if you are interested in studying for the GRE, I want to suggest 2 years. Have you guys heard of the program Magoosh? It's a wonderful online program to study for the GRE or any of the others. It's M-A-G-O-O-S-H, Magoosh. My daughter, the reason I know this is the date is my daughter is taking the GRE. She graduated from here a year and a half ago. She's not sure when she's going to apply to grad school, but she's kind of in study mode right now. So she's taking the GRE, kind of putting it in her back pocket. And I've been studying with her with Magoosh. It's fun. Who knew studying is fun? So Magoosh is a great way to look at that. But you can go on the GRE website and they can tell you the dates with that. All right, I'm ending it. Thank you all.